Helldivers 2 is an absolute blast to play. It doesn't hold your hand and expects you and your squad to collaborate and work together to overcome obstacles. There are subtle nuances and approaches you can take when considering party compositions, personal gear setups, and moment-to-moment gameplay to ensure you're as effective and efficient as possible. With that in mind, here are 15 tips I wish I knew when starting out in Helldivers 2. First of all, get to know your weapon functions. To do this, you hold down reload, and here you can adjust things like the magnification of scopes, change the fire rate of your weapon, add on light sources for night missions, and so on and so forth. This is also the case for using things like support weapons in the form of the antimatter rifle, for example, which you'll unlock later in your level progression, but you will likely come across these when you play. This is very helpful for dealing with bigger nasties that you come up against at a very safe distance, and you can slap on, I think it's a 200 meter magnification scope for this one, so you can really pick them off at range, especially if you get at some nice high levels of elevation. Something that I would find really helpful personally would be if you just took a moment to hit that subscribe button now and support the channel. It's really making all the difference, folks. I cannot thank you enough for all the support you've given me on stream and in these videos. Make sure you get out of the finals and the Call of Duty mindsets when considering your reload timings. I have been absolutely terrible for this. When you reload a weapon and it has ammo in the clip, this will be discarded and will not go back into your ammunition pool. If you don't get on top of this, you will find yourself needing to resupply very often, and this can be quite a costly habit when you are at higher difficulties. When you drop in, do not tunnel vision the main objective. In fact, consider them as something that you will do organically as you traverse the map. My squad and I have found great merit in dropping near a side objective that is also near bug nests and other red highlighted areas on the map. This is beneficial when you first start playing for a number of reasons. Firstly, I think it gives you the valuable combat experience that you need to learn the ropes of the game, and then secondly, it also ensures that you are maximizing the amount of samples, requisition points, and overall XP gain permission. That all being said, it's also really fun. It lets you get into the kind of meat and bones of the game itself, and I would fully recommend that this is an approach you take. Speaking of samples and nests, make sure that once you've obliterated a nest that you check the area thoroughly, as they often drop valuable samples which you will need to use to unlock your ship modules. More on those later. You can take out nests in a number of ways. A well-placed grenade down the hatch or some precise stratagem drops will really work their magic here. Samples also spawn on the outside radius of larger nests, so don't neglect looking there. Use the mini-map and make sure you zoom it out fully. On PC, if you right-click, you can also ping areas for your team to see as a waypoint. This, combined with the regular pinging with Q, is especially helpful when trying to articulate routes that you want to take to progress through the mission. If you're using light armor, you can also ping on the map and you will get a small, short radar pulse at that position, revealing any enemies momentarily on the mini-map. Speaking of the mini-map, if you have a radar side mission, these look like little satellite dish symbols on the map and UI, make sure you do it. It will reveal every single drop and every area of interest on the map, and this makes collecting gear and resources much easier, and your run will therefore be much more profitable. Also, look for the glints of light and beams on the horizon. This signifies the positioning of where resources are located and can be a great way to accrue super credits, the in-game currency, and also supplies and weapons, and generally make your mission much more easy. Other areas that offer this are bunkers. These are the little doorways that you find in the kind of little crevices that you come across on the map, and they require 2 people to stand on the left and right side of the door and press the button to open it up. Or you can also come across these metal cupboard type things in similar little crevices, which you can blow the fronts off with a well-placed explosive. Resupplying is a really integral part of the game, and this next tip is a really cheeky, useful one. When someone has a supply pack on their back and it is empty, if you call down a resupply, prioritize giving them the resupply first. This is because it will restock all 4 charges into their backpack and make much more efficient use of said resupply. With that in mind, get this supply pack stratagem. It's extremely overpowered, and I'll explain why now. Another lethal early combination that I would recommend rushing for is the supply pack and grenade launcher combo. This thing absolutely slaps, and with a supply pack on your back, you can sustain your yourself really well indeed. It makes you an absolute wrecking ball, especially against those larger squishy targets like the acid spitters. This deals with them swiftly, and if well placed, you can delete more than one at once. I've seen numerous occasions, and it's not usually me, mind, in the squad using that setup, but whoever does, 9 times out of 10 has by far more kills and kind of acts as that sort of special killer, if that makes sense. So a really useful strategy is to include at least one of these setups in your squad. In terms of stratagems, this one is absolutely huge. I can't stress this enough, especially when you're getting up to more higher challenging levels of difficulty. Synchronize your stratagems in a thoughtful manner. Do not just mindlessly throw in the biggest, craziest explosions at random. Whilst that's really fun, it is not optimal, and you can often make your life much harder. Instead, if you can, agree on the order and positioning of your call-ins. Do not sleep on the orbital EMS strike either, folks. This is absolutely amazing for crowd control, and if you're in comms with your team, you can easily make sure that their payloads absolutely wreck its targets because you've effectively slowed the enemy down to a grinding pace, and it just makes them a very easy target. A great example of this is when you're attacking a large nest. If you throw down an EMS just before all hell breaks loose, what you actually do is you create a little choke point, a little funnel where all the mobs get cramped together and they just get absolutely obliterated by everyone's stratagems and whatever else they're using. So try it yourself, see how that works out, and let me know what you think in the comments. Be careful with turrets. They are a friendly fire nightmare, whilst they are so effective at ripping through the smaller enemies and just raining havoc down on bugs and automatons. Call them out when you put them down, because they have a really horrendous habit of 180 spinning and shooting you because there's one little mob behind you. I've found that you've got to be thoughtful about where you place these. Put them in elevated places. Think about their line of fire and where they're going to go no matter which way they turn. And also, this was a good one, put it against a wall of a building or rocks in the terrain and landscape. This means it'll prevent it from shooting backwards at you and kind of controls the area in which it's going to fire. Obviously, communicate with your squad and tell them it's there, because if they don't realize, they might run forward and run into the line of fire. Really useful one there, folks. With that being said, expect team kills and friendly fire when using this stratagem. Speaking of which, if you or your squad mates die, this is a big one, try your best to reinforce near the corpse when you drop them back in, because all your equipment, all your samples, which are incredibly valuable, all drop at that area. The amount of times my squad and I got killed by something and we just panicked through a reinforcing halfway across the map, the person's then left with no way to get their own gear back, and we ended up leaving with less samples than we wanted to, which was quite frustrating and slows down your overall progress. When you're extracting, make sure you dump all your supplies and support weapons down quickly before an extract. This just makes the area much more friendly for you to work in when you've got a huge incoming of mobs. This again becomes incredibly relevant when you're playing on challenging difficulty or higher. You've got to be prepared for quite big swarms approaching you in the latter parts of that extract, and it can get quite overbearing, and this just really helps out. Next up are just some quick brief tips about the ship-based area in the menus. Don't sleep on armor types. Light, heavy, and medium armor each have their own statistics and subsequently have strengths and weaknesses. They also come with passive abilities which lend themselves to different styles of play. For example, if you're using the jetpack and want to be a little bit more of a recon, sneaky style player, light armor has a perk that decreases the range enemies can detect you from by, I believe, 30%. This is a really useful thing if you want to try getting and be a bit disruptive. Think back to what I just said about that EMS orbital strike. If you want to get those in and kind of run ahead and sort of disrupt the enemies from the front, this is a really nice armor to use. You can also get a light armor that pings areas on the map, as I mentioned before, when you right click. Certain armor types also give you a further throw distance, so you can stay further away when you're putting your stratagems in. Don't sleep on this. These are the stat sticks, for want of a better phrase, when you're configuring your character. When you're looking at the war bonds, plan your medal acquisition route ahead of time. Do not mindlessly buy items just because you think it looks good. Look at what's going to be most valuable to you at that given time. Grenades, weapons, which ones do you want to focus on? How many medals do you need to unlock each page? This will save you time in the long run with a little bit of thought behind it, folks. Take this approach when you're buying stratagems, especially the ship modules. These are really expensive. Plan the route and decide how you want to approach your unlocks. If I were you and you've got a squad to play with, talk about it. See who wants to play which role. If you want to be a tank and a support kind of player, look at the shield generator and things like that, and make sure most importantly, you're having fun. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.